Welcome to How to Decorate from Ballard Designs, a weekly podcast all about the trials and triumphs of decorating and redecorating your home. I'm Caroline. I'm on the marketing team.
And I'm Taryn, and I'm a product designer.
I'm Liz. I head up the creative team.
We're your hosts. Join the expert team at Ballard Designs for tips, tricks, and tales from interior designers, stylists, and other talents in the design world.
Plus, we'll answer your decorating dilemmas at the end of each episode.
We love answering your questions, so don't forget to email us at podcast@ballarddesigns.net.
Now, on with the show. Welcome back to the How to Decorate podcast. I'm Caroline. I'm here with Liz.
Hi, everyone.
And we are thrilled to welcome back to the show Corey Damen Jenkins, principal and CEO of Corey Damen Jenkins and Associates. He's an AD100 and Elle Decor A-list designer known for his traditional but boldly colorful and patterned room. He's also a masterclass instructor and a published author. And today, we are getting a first look at his upcoming book, his second, Design Reimagined, a fresh and colorful take on timeless rooms, publishing this fall with Rizzoli. We're going to be discussing the evolution of his design philosophy, the tools he uses to create layered, polished spaces, as well as his new YouTube series, aptly named Design Reimagined with Corey Damen Jenkins. So, Corey, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I have been looking forward to this chat, and we're such huge fans of all of you and the brand, so I'm looking forward to this discussion. It's going to be fun.
Likewise.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
The anecdote that stands out from your first book is the 79th
Yes.
door. So I think we have to start from there. Just for any of our listeners who aren't already familiar with your work, you can kind of tell them about that little anecdote from Design Remix, and then we're going to get into Design Reimagined.
Well, I would give the experience of the 779 doors 1 star and do not recommend. It was something that I had to do when I launched this firm 15 years ago. I initially got my start in interior design back in 1996. I enjoyed my studies of drafting and architecture, and then I made a big pivot into the automotive business world for about 10 years, working as a prototype and direct materials buyer for the big three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler. So my responsibilities included designing and selecting furniture for the lobbies and for the executive offices, but also office supplies and, the fertilizer used on the lawn, signage on the property. I did the whole encompassing purchasing agency for the company. So it's somewhat creative, but not nearly as exciting as what I would hope for a design career. But it paid well. And that's very important. I was living in Michigan at the time, and I did that for, like I mentioned, 10 years. And in 2007, when the Great Recession hit, I got laid off. And that was definitely unexpected because I thought I was going to basically continue working there and retire from there, get my pension, as most Michiganders do. That's like the Michigander dream. You work at the big three on the line or at a bank, and you get your pension and you retire, and you go off into the sunset, right? Well, my sunset came a little early, and I was retired out against my will, basically. And I found myself at home with some boxes from my office thinking, what am I going to do next? So after a couple of false starts, I decided that I needed to create a new beginning for myself, a reimagining, if you will, and get back into my original first love, which was interior design, a job that could not be outsourced to a different country, right? But that was a daunting task because we're at the height of the recession at this point. It's 2008. And people in Michigan are very conservative, very laid back. They don't believe in, showing off their wealth, especially to friends and neighbors who they know are going through a tough time financially with the economic meltdown that we were experiencing. So the idea of launching a design firm at the height of a Great Recession in Michigan, of all places, is a tall order. But I was very determined. I had a Honda Accord, and because of what I was planning to do, which was basically installing a grassroots campaign to find my first client, I did not feel comfortable driving my Honda Accord around to find my first client. So I went to the local enterprise rent-a-car shop, and I explained to them that I had a goal. I'm going to knock on 1,000 doors in Metro Detroit to find my first design client. And chances are that client's probably going to be an executive or in some way, shape, or form related to the big three. And the big three makes GM, Ford, and Chrysler. So I cannot drive a foreign vehicle up to their driveway. So I need to, rent from you a Chrysler 300, and I need the same Chrysler 300 each and every time I come to you, because I want people to think that it's mine, And so the owner was completely, sympathetic to my plight, and he got me a beautiful black and silver Chrysler 300. And it was such a beautiful thing to look at, because my Honda Accord was white with orange accoutrements on it, ergo rust. And I realized I needed to kind of, upgrade a little bit to get this first client in the door. So I drove around and I saw beautiful homes being built. Even during the recession, there was lots of construction going on. If I saw a house being constructed, I would, pull up to the driveway, get out with my little satchel. And I had, color boards and renderings and of course, brochures and business cards. And I had a very simple spiel. My name is Corey Damen Jenkins. I'm an interior designer. Are you in need of design services today? And if I saw a hotel that needed to be renovated, or a restaurant, anything that I thought was in bad taste, I pulled up to that location and knocked on that door. I set a goal for myself for 1,000 doors. After about 778 doors in, I started to get a little discouraged. Remember, I had just been laid off during the Great Recession, and now I've had so many rejections at these doors. People would open the door and then slam their door, back in my face. I had a couple of people set their dogs out on the property to chase me off. I got up, real close and personal with a husky, one that had one eye was blue and one eye was green. I should never have had that much up close personal information about that dog. Way too close. Way too 4K high definition for my taste, right? I had some people call me some very unsavory names, right? I am soliciting business, so I was, I guess, eligible for that. And then there were the people who invited me in and took me for all of my ideas. And then when I gave them a letter of agreement, would ghost me. So there was lots of rejection back to back, and I got very discouraged. My self-esteem kind of took a downward spiral. And so I rounded down my goal from 1,000 doors to 800. And I said to myself, if I don't get a hit by door 800, I'll just hang this up, get a job at Starbucks, because, at least they have healthcare insurance policies available, and I'll just ride this out until the recession blows over. And at the 779th door, this wonderful couple came to the door. I pulled up to their gated community, and I waited for, someone to type in their code, and the wrought iron gates opened. They pulled in, so I pulled in after them. I got out, started walking the street, and I came to the 779th door, beautiful home in this gated community. And this doctor and his wife answered the door. They had just parted ways with their previous interior designer. And they were just lovely. It was a cold, blustery winter day. They offered me coffee and scones, which was a really great sign, because no one had ever offered me anything. And if I can just say this, when someone offers you something that's like hospitable, that's a signal that they're looking at you as a potential partner, as a guest, and not just the help, if you know what I mean. So that was a really great first sign. And long story short, because it's a long story, they ended up hiring me to decorate their home. I put my heart and soul into it. We transformed several spaces. I got it professionally photographed, emptied my little piggy bank on that, because the photographer was very expensive, but she was worth it. And I put the imagery up on my GoDaddy.com website that I had designed on my own with a friend. And 3 weeks later, HGTV's casting executives discovered my work online and cast me on my first television show. It was one of those HGTV Design Star competitions where you go up against other designers and fight to the death in front of national, televised, audiences. And I won. And that catapulted our brand to international and later, it catapulted our brand to national and then later international acclaim that we are very grateful for today.
Well, I love that story, not because I know it was obviously a challenging time, but because I do feel like it really encapsulates so much about you, your determination, but also like your positivity. Your rooms are just so exuberant, and bold, and just so like positive, but in the like they're so happy.
Thank you.
And so you obviously retell that story with such a positivity to it, even though I'm sure it was a very hard time.
One star, do not recommend.
Yeah.
That is quite the hustle story. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I think that also speaks to, I think the way that you approach your practice now. I feel like there's such generosity in your practice and how you teach and the amount of information that you are giving in your masterclass and your upcoming YouTube series. I find that very inspiring.
Thank you. You know, I appreciate you saying that. I felt when I launched my firm and got really serious with the business, I encountered some gatekeeping, Liz, that I felt was very discouraging. A lot of the designers there in Michigan did not want to share information like who's the best wallpaper installer, who's the best painter. People were so selfish with their resources. And I told myself, if I'm ever blessed to climb to the top of the ladder of success, I will not pull it up after myself. I will leave it down and help others climb. So now I'm in a position to kind of give back and to hopefully inspire and encourage others, whether they're creators in the field or not. Just, I think we need to kind of move past this whole gatekeeping of sources and information and be more willing to accept the fact that there's enough for everyone and to just be more generous,
Yeah.
Goes a long way.
Because everyone has their own perspective and everyone's going to bring their own ideas. So let's build on each other. Yeah.
It's so easy. And life is so much more simpler when you do it that way. So I enjoy it.
We're talking about your book, Design Remix, where you tell the story of the 779th door. But that was released in 2021. So it's really only been 4 years. And, what really was what kickstarted the path to your second book? It's a big undertaking to write a book. So what was it that you felt compelled to say that you wanted to write another book to say it?
Well, we had such a great reception with Design Remix. And so when the publishers invited me at Rizzoli to come back and consider a second, partnership or a continuation of our partnership with the second book, the idea was, what can we do that we hadn't done before? So Design Remix was governed more by themes. Each chapter focused on a certain tenet of design and decor, or decoration, I should say. So for example, how to select bold colors, the bold standard, or how to design eclectic exuberance, right? These are the different chapter titles that focus on different types, black and white and pattern play and, textures and things of that nature. Design Reimagined, however, is much different in the sense that it's actually governed by 10 actual projects. And that format is just different. You're going to see entire projects from beginning to end, completely fleshed out, kitchens, dining rooms, bathrooms, bedrooms, but all from the same home or the same project. The thing about Design Remix is that I had several clients' homes featured, but they're split up over the entire book from front to cover because they're being governed by the topic. With Design Reimagined, if you want to find one particular theme or design tenet, it'll be covered in that chapter with that home. And then like Design Remix, Design Reimagined also has takeaways in the style of what I did on Masterclass, which was the foundation of Design Remix. We took that same theme, if you will, and we teach a lot about how to, bring these different principles home in a way that's affordable and relatable, bite-sized, and easier to achieve. It's a bigger book. Size-wise, Design Remix will stack on top of this one. It's a much bigger trim. It's probably, I think, 30 pages, 40 pages longer than Design Remix. It's a fancier book. Like they gave us a bigger budget with this one, I think that's what happens when your first book does well. It's heading towards, I think, its 7th reprint. They were like, let's really make this book special. So like, for example, the pages are gilded in copper. The edges are gilded in copper, and the hard case is wrapped in this gorgeous peacock feathered linen. Now, no peacocks were injured or maimed in the making of the book, but it's definitely more textile friendly, textile driven, more fashion, like more haute couture fashion forward as far as the design of the book. And I'm looking forward to people seeing that when it arrives.
Oh, I can't wait to have one in hand.
It's so fun.
And congratulations on 7 reprints. That's outrageous.
That's a
amazing.
lot for a design book.
I'm happy just to get one reprint. So I feel like a recording artist. When the sophomore album comes out, please don't let this one flop, but we're very excited. And it's only a few dollars more than the first book, even accounting for inflation. So again, it really shows the support that we have from the wonderful publishers and editors at Rizzoli to give us such a big chunky book for only a few dollars more than Design Remix. I mean, it's just, we're just so thrilled.
Yeah, I loved in the introduction, you talk a lot about flexibility, and you kind of talk about it both in in terms of life and the sort of the direction change that your life has taken in the last 4 years, but also in the context of your client project. So I wonder if you could just talk about why it's so important in design, and I guess maybe what you've learned about flexibility in the last couple of years.
That's such a great question. I've learned that nothing changes in life but change. So if you're not experiencing changes and pivots, you're not really living. And so between closing my offices in Michigan, and saying goodbye to my beautiful home there, I had a home there, an office there, and I also had an apartment and an office in New York. But consolidating all of our resources to New York City was a big change, right? And then hiring more staff and expanding our office. I had a good-sized atelier when we got the office space in New York on the penthouse floor. We've now doubled our size. We have about 50% of the top floor now, and we're still growing. I'm very proud of that, but that comes with responsibility. We have exciting client projects, and the thing about being a New Yorker versus being a Michigander is that there's a bit of a wall that I think separates people from reaching out to the Midwest to hire for design. I don't know why, because we have great taste and style in Michigan as well. Whereas New York, if you're a New York-based designer, people reach out to you and they will bring you all the way up to the northeastern seaboard, all the way down to the south, over to California, to the Midwest. It's just a much more centrally located place to be for our firm. And our clients love coming to us now and meeting with us in New York City. They'll go and catch a great show, a play, great food. Whereas Michigan, it was always come to us because for whatever reason, people didn't want to come to the Great Lakes.
Yeah. So you're saying moving to New York made it to where you had more national projects?
Yes, absolutely.
That's so funny. I mean, I guess it makes total sense, but also does in some ways seem counterintuitive.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I think, a logistical decision that I made that I was scared to make. Honestly, I was nervous to make the decision. But so far, it has paid off well. And we have great clients and just a top-notch team. I mean, I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah. Well, you talk in that introduction, you talk about flexibility and you talk about how important it is when you're tackling a design project because, like in life, there's always something that maybe requires, to be reimagined. And I wonder if you could kind of share like some of the some examples of things that maybe were not in the original plan, which then sort of you had to either solve as a puzzle or bring in, based on circumstances.
For like
in the design project, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the one thing that I think sets apart this book from Remix is that every project in Reimagined are renovations. There's no new construction in this book whatsoever, whereas Design Remix had a few new construction projects. That's just by pure coincidence. We've done new construction projects since 21. We just did not put them in this book, hence the term Reimagined. So when you are embarking on a project and it has a historic provenance to it, or it's just an older home that you're renovating, you're going to come across things that are unexpected. It could be a beam in the ceiling that you cannot move because if you move it, the entire house collapses upon itself. That's a big problem. Or perhaps there's plumbing that is essential and you need to, work around that. Or, who knows what else is kind of laying beneath the floorboards, above the ceiling, in the walls. So you have to be very flexible and willing to pivot. It's like sailing a ship on the water. You don't sail in a straight line. You're constantly making pivots and turns and curves because the earth is round. As long as you arrive at your final destination, that's what really matters. So we may set out with a color palette or a design plan that's going to be a certain thing, a certain way. The client may change their mind. They are 100% entitled to do that, but that could cause for, that could be a cause for a pivot. Or you may encounter something structurally that calls for a pivot. So as a designer, you just have to be willing to not take yourself seriously and recognize this is part of the job, is to be very flexible and very open to change.
Do you think that openness is something like, did you have to learn that or something that you've always had as a strength in your kind of tool belt?
I think I learned that lesson best when I lost my job during the Great Recession,
Yeah.
because that was when I personally had to make the biggest pivot or the biggest change. I had a very set goal of what I wanted to do up to that point as far as a career. And then life said, guess what? We have an update for you. And as you download your life's iPhone and get these new protocols, you're now going in a completely different, direction.
Yeah.
And so I resisted that for a minute, Caroline. I'll be honest. I did resist that inclination, that pivot to make a change, because I just wanted to set my life in a certain direction. But it all came into fruition in a way that I could never have possibly imagined. So I'm good with the lessons now. I'm not saying I want to continue learning that lesson over and over and over again, but
Yeah.
I learned that one.
No, but you put all your chips in on you, and that was amazing, and that totally paid off.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that I think is pivotal, I guess, to use that word again, in your work is this combination of traditional and, contemporary or modern. Now, your work, I would say overall, like from an aerial, it does read more traditional because you have this layering, you have these bold colors. It's sort of a maximalism in there. But then when you really look at the details, there's so many more sleek shapes, a track arm, a modern dining table or modern dining chairs, chandeliers, that kind of thing. So I found that so interesting because, at first glance, it feels like, oh, it's so traditional, but then it's really not in many ways. So I'm curious, kind of how you like, where did that design DNA come from? Is that intentional? Is it just sort of like the way you see rooms? And then maybe we can talk about how to sort of recreate that for our listeners.
I think both of my grandmothers and my mother were keen decorators. They had beautiful homes, and they were fearless, especially my mother. They were very fearless when it came to being okay with incorporating things that they had, things that have been passed down from family, generational wealth, if you will, things that had a nostalgic value, and learning how to make it work. If it was a great-grandparent's credenza that was passed down, that maybe stylistically was not what my mother wanted, she would be out there painting that piece and making it fit the vernacular that she wanted for her living room. So I think realizing that there's something that's very beautiful about a Saarinen table with a Louis XVI Bergère, and then having that paired with a Kagan sofa up against a maximalist Decorator wall covering, and then a canthus leaf detail and egg and dart molding. It's very traditional. And then I don't know, an Art Deco chandelier. You have all these different styles. And I think having representatives of each design style coalescing into one mix or one remix, if you will, I think it takes the timestamp off of the room, because they all are representatives of, they're all constituencies from different time periods. The Saarinen table brings the 1960s vibe into it. The Kagan sofa, right? The Louis XVI may be an antique, a vintage piece, but there's something that's very beautiful and sexy and dynamic about being unapologetically, eclectically exuberant and finding joy in the fact that not everything has to match, but everything should flow. And we will not be held captive to what my neighbors are doing or what my mom and dad did or what my sister did for her house. I will defeat homogeny. I will defeat the pressure from, large catalogs that come unsolicited, that are dropped off on your doorstep, that are just so gigantic and full of gray and beige interiors. We will defeat the pressure to do like everyone else. And we will go to the flea markets, we will go to the estate sales, we will go to this and that, and we will accept the things that are passed down from our families, and we will make it all work, because life is short. And while I'm here, I'm going to live for me authentically, because I only have 70, 80, 90 years to do it. And I think when people figure that out, they realize there's so much more freedom and joy in living authentically and beautifully with what you have versus trying to impress other people with things you don't really need, with money you should not be spending for things you really don't want.
And I think we're done here.
Bye.
No, I really love how you do take the time to dig in and layer all of these things that have such different provenance. And I think layering is the key word there too, because kind of just like having your personality unfold in a room where you get to see like, oh yeah, I like this, but I also like that. And it just kind of helps the room unfold and, the personality of, I think, the homeowner.
Yeah. Yes. And it's actually, Liz, a more cost-effective way to do interior design. So many young people that are newly married have access to things that their parents give them. And they may feel this pressure to not use them because, I don't know, I didn't buy that for myself, or my girlfriend, her entire house is modern and I want to be, have an interior that's very cohesive like she does. Well, you don't know what her circumstances were, but you have this great credenza from your great grandmother that has all these stories that are so authentic and special in a real conversation piece. There's simply nothing to talk about if everything in the room is brand new, if everything in the room is beige. I always say life is too short to live in a beige box. And I love beige. I love taupe. But can we throw in a little emerald green with that? A little chocolate? We can do shades of chocolate and taupe and brown and tan. Let's throw in some white and some gold and a little bit of black, right? Even in neutrality, there is versatility.
Yeah.
And so I think people just have to be more open to being eclectically exuberant and being joyful in the joy of design.
Well, plus, if you take your, aunt or grandmother's credenza, that is more dollars that you can put towards something else that you really want, and you can get a better quality of that thing. So I'm with you. I never understood that philosophy of like saying no to free things.
Yes.
I'm going to say yes.
Take it and repaint it, change the hardware, It's also environmentally responsible.
Yeah.
It's less waste on our planet. So please embrace these beautiful things because they're unique to you and no one else is going to have it but you. And I think that's just a reason to do somersaults in this life that we have right now.
You don't have to say yes to like a half-broken IKEA bookcase, but like an antique that maybe isn't really your style or something you would have picked out. Like, come on.
Yeah, learn to embrace it and lean into it. And remember, you're just simply doing your part to defeat homogeny.
Yeah.
Okay,
but all right, Liz, you said combining this and that. How do we make sure that this and that can work together? Like you get this credenza from your grandmother. It's not something you want. Maybe you can paint it, but like, how do you make it work within a whole when on its own, maybe it's not what you're looking for?
So, like I taught on my masterclass, I really believe in creating a mood board or a color board. Take a picture of the credenza, for example, print it out and lay it on a table. Take pictures or screenshots or print off images of furniture you're considering from various websites like Ballard or, whatever the case may be, and lay it all out. Cut it out and lay it out together and see if there's a harmony in those pieces. Furniture and interiors, accessories, lamps, they do speak to each other. And it's important that we remember that design is all about the composition of a space. I'm using another analogy here because, I love to speak in analogies. When a conductor is composing an orchestra, there are various instruments in the box that are playing. They have a warm-up session, and it may sound like utter noise because they're tuning their instruments. But once they have their musical sheets in front of them, they have their notes. It's going to be a harmonious accompaniment of gorgeous music. But you need a conductor to kind of guide them through the process. So if the strings over here are too loud and there needs to be cut for a minute to allow, I don't know, the drums to start playing, he's going to kind of direct that. And the same thing holds true with interior design. Lay out these pieces and see if there's a harmony. And if something does not feel harmonious, it's truly a gut reaction. You just know. And it's like I said on the trailer for Masterclass, you know when it's ugly, So you don't keep trying to fit the circle into a square, let it go. And that's the benefit of planning it out with a mood board versus buying everything and then being stuck with all this stuff. I prefer to plan things out strategically and then edit. And any design plan that does not require an edit, at least 1 or 2 rounds of editing, is not a solid design plan. So
it's not done yet.
It's not done yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What if once you've laid it all out, you feel like it works. Am I then what about measuring? Because that seems to me like a big trick, a trip up. That's the word I'm looking for pulling sort of disjointed pieces together, because you've got this credenza, you need to find the right mirror to put over it, but it has to be the right scale. So what if they align maybe visually on your mood board? How do you know if it's going to work scale-wise?
Well, I think that scale is absolutely important because that's what lends itself to a more functional space. There are some general rules that you could consider as principles versus rules. I try to stay away from using rules overall because rules are meant to be broken. So on my upcoming Design Reimagined series, I talk about space between furniture. And I say, as a general rule, consider 3 feet between pieces of furniture. But you can also get away with, 2 feet or 1.5 feet. If the curvature of this Louis XVI chair, by the time it, curves out with the leg, is only 18 inches from the sofa, and that's enough to put a table there, a little martini table, go for it. Don't use the 3-foot rule there because visually you don't need it. I think they should be really used as principles to guide you. And again, it's all about how it feels. It's all about how it looks. There are, I think, parameters that should be followed when it comes to being safe in the space. A chandelier should not be hanging, 6 feet over a bathtub. If you stand up and try to turn the light bulb on and, zap goodbye, there are some rules there, right? You have to follow. But I do think that there's something to be said for having the freedom of letting things kind of play out and seeing what feels right as you navigate through the space.
I love the mood board idea because I think you're right. Once you sort of see them next to each other, you start to really sort of zero in on maybe things that are different about the pieces, but that work together. For example, a really sort of square console table looks so good with a round mirror over the top. And you don't necessarily think about that until you're seeing, you've got a credenza, you're seeing the pictures on your surface together, and you've got a square one, you've got a mirror, and you're like, oh, just the mirror one looks so much better. And you're not going to find that until you're laying it all out on the surface, like you said.
Absolutely. And the piece of furniture will also dictate what needs to come next. Like if you start with a grounding piece like this sofa section I'm sitting on here in my living room, putting a square table here with this L-shaped sectional is not very comfortable to get in here because I may nick my leg on the sharp corners of a table when you're, nestling it in with this sofa sectional. So we have a round Sarnen table here. And because of the curvature of the table, there's no chance for me to scrape my leg or to have any sort of tripping hazard because the round circle just geometrically favors the L-shaped intersection of the sofa sectional. So it's also about living with the space and seeing what feels right and perhaps doing so in a way that avoids you, damaging your legs. But I think there's something to planning it out if you can. Use paper, trace paper, sketch things out, sketch a floor plan out. There's even online tools right now that you can use on different websites to plan these spaces out.
Yeah, shameless plug. We have one. It's called, it's called our room planner. But I will say that I learned so much from learning how to draw in scale. And it's so easy. And I feel like you could teach it to yourself probably in an hour. You get some graph paper, you get like a little scale, like an architecture scale that you can get off Amazon. And there is so much that revealed itself to me when I just drew it to scale, because like you said, you can tell when it looks bad.
Right.
And so you draw it to scale and you're like, this doesn't work, period. Like,
Yep.
gotta
When it's
rethink
ugly.
this, gotta be flexible, gotta find something else. The scale is everything. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I love your approach to moving through a space, and definitely how you talk about, and this might be controversial, that the kitchen is not the heart of the home, the living room is.
Mm-hmm.
And the placement of furniture within a living room is so important. Can you talk a little bit about your ideas about the living room?
Yeah, we spend over 1,000 hours a year on average as human beings in our kitchen or the place where we make food. So I'm not saying it's not an important part or an important nucleus of a home. But once you have met your goal there as far as making food, you usually leave and go sit down someplace. So the living room is often where people land, or the dining room. And that's where you have great conversations, memories are made, arguments are had, discussions about future planning, vacations, watching TV. Again, where all the memories are being crafted is in the living room. So I think that's really an eligible candidate as the heart of the home, in my personal professional opinion.
I could not agree with you more. I'm a cook who does not want people in the kitchen with me. Go away.
Go away.
Let me work, and then I will join you.
Yeah.
Shoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
But I also love like how you talk about the space planning of a living room where, I know you're sitting in your own living room on a sectional, but that's not your first choice.
No. And it's not. I hated using sectionals. Yes, diplomatic magic there, some little abracadabra for the sake of my relationship.
Why do you hate a sectional?
I don't hate them. They have their purpose. Mm-hmm. They're just not my first go-to. But I think in New York and smaller spaces across the board, they definitely, tuck into a corner much better than a sofa or a love seat might do. In Michigan, I was designing these big homes, and we had these gargantuan sized rooms. So there was just no need to have a lot of sectionals because we had plenty of space to move around. But in New York and other smaller, spaces, a sectional has great purpose. Mm-hmm. This one is made for this corner. I mean, it just tucks in so naturally, and it gives you the chance to have other seatings, other groupings of seating in the room. So I've come around to it. Again, you mentioned earlier about my evolution, Caroline. Okay, I've evolved and pivoted to accepting sectionals into my daily vernacular for design.
You're so right, though. People think that if they have a big room, they just have to fill it with a giant sectional. But sectionals are so specific. They're very rarely going to move. I mean, you did it, but they're very rarely going to move to your next place and work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's more the latter of what you just mentioned, not just using the sofa sectional as a Band-Aid to fix a large room. Mm-hmm. I'd rather zone the room out into several bite-sized tableaus, if you will, or little vignettes, where a sofa sectional can be one vignette, and then maybe there's another sofa elsewhere in the room with a couple of, swivel chairs that are partnered with it, and maybe a desk. I think a desk in a living room is awesome because some people have ergonomic back issues, and they don't want to sit on a sectional all day and watch TV. They may have to get up and stretch and change the picture of their back. So I think having a nice desk and a desk chair is a nice option for people to have in the family room, so that if they're watching a family movie with everyone, they're not missing out if their physique is not allowing them to sit on a sofa for hours at a time. So I just think versatility is very important.
Yeah. Well, speaking of a desk in the living room, I really loved the first chapter of the book. It is this fabulous, what's also the cover, it's this fabulous Upper East Side apartment, and it's also episode 1 of your YouTube series. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about the project? Why did you open with this project?
It was a really fun, joyful, colorful project. And all of my clients are so wonderful, and they all come with such diverse personalities and worldviews and styles and tastes. And so this one, I usually have to push my clients to be a bit bolder. And this one I did not. I had to sometimes, temper what we were doing a little bit because she wanted to really embrace maximalism in its, fullest degree, which was great. We had so much fun with it. She was making a big life change of her own and moving her two daughters from their previous home to the New York City area, and had purchased this beautiful apartment overlooking Central Park. The apartment itself was in a historic pre-war building, and the lobby was beautiful and classic, but the apartment itself was horribly renovated in the 80s, or maybe it was the 90s, and just devoid of any sort of character of any kind. The only redeeming values were really just the views of the park. So we set about doing a complete transformation of the space, and we went all out. She's a very haute couture, fashion-forward lady, and she loves the intersection where fashion and design for interiors kind of meet. So you'll see a lot of celebration of texture and color with, Gracie wall coverings and beautiful cravat and Jofa fabrics and Schumacher mixed in, and great rugs and incredible chandeliers from eye holes. It was a very thrilling job to work on because there was no stopping her. She wanted to create a space to set an example for her daughters, to not settle and to select at all times. And she told me my mandate, she said, Corey, your mandate is to make this home a place for little women, for girls. And so you'll see a lot of pink, but also a lot of lavender and a lot of green and peacocks and the whole nine. Silk embroidered wall coverings, you name it, we've got it. And I'm just so thrilled that it landed the front cover.
And I love the YouTube series where you really break down how you think about, building in the butler's pantry in this beautiful blue and gold tile, and how that references into like the hand painting in the Gracie wallpaper, and just kind of how you're going about carrying through the design throughout the entire space.
Yeah. The sofa had a great Suzanne velvet on it, and we wanted to give it an anchor, if you will, Liz, in that space. And so the backsplash by Anne Sachs in the butler's pantry was an easy, understated way to give that sofa gravity in the room. And it's also visually beckoning. It makes you want to go up there and make yourself a drink. So there's lots of jewel tones at work in this home. And I was happy about that because historically jewel tones, when you think about emerald green, sapphire blue, ruby red, amethyst, when you look at ancient civilizations, those colors in dyes, in garments, and in furnishings, drapery panels and things of that nature, were reserved for the wealthy. The poor could not afford access to the dyes to make their own clothing and interiors colorful. So they were always draping their bodies and their homes in beige and gray and white because that did not require dye. And so therefore it was, quote unquote, affordable for those who were poor. What's interesting is that during the Great Recession, everyone was painting their homes beige and gray. And the reason why, I think, just from studying it and how color theory works, when people are about to take flight or they're about to part ways with something or they're anticipating losing something, they go for non-committal colors. So people were painting their homes during the Great Recession, the housing crisis, if you recall, beige and gray. They figured that would appeal to everyone. I might not have this house a year from now. I might not be here 3 months from now. So I'm going to go for the least offensive, least, visually committed color palette that will hopefully appeal to everyone, because I don't really have a dog in this fight anymore. So if you look at the way how colors have translated themselves throughout history, from those who were poor in ancient civilizations to even the Great Recession of 2008, we associate neutral colors with being going with loss, going without, parting ways, not committing, not feeling permanent about the decision that you're making. Whereas if you have a home like this client and you fill it with all the joyful colors that you love, you're not concerned about who's going to buy the house after you. If they buy the house from you, that's their problem to make it their own. But she refused to live in this recession-esque world where I'm going to just go for the safe, neutral colors in case I might sell this home. Who lives life like that? That's not really design reimagined. And so that was why we did the home with the jewel tones that you see throughout the property.
Also, don't you need like joy and happiness and color more when you're, struggling?
Yes, absolutely. It's great for the mood.
Okay, that purple dining room
Yes.
I'm so glad it was the cover because it is absolutely spectacular, the most gorgeous shade of purple. Talk to us about the sort of genesis of that room. What was the starting point? Did you know that you wanted a purple or did the client know she wanted a purple dining room? And this actually was one of the rooms where I was like, that room feels so traditional just in the color palette, the lacquer, the gilding, the chandelier, but the chairs are quite modern. Well, not modern, but they're very streamlined.
Right.
The table even has this like sort of modern fluting and base. So that was definitely one where I was like, it's, it reads traditional, but there's lots of modern details in here.
See, I see this dining room as Josephine Baker as a dining room. Like,
I love that.
It is amazing.
If Josephine Baker was a person, was a dining room, this would be like
this is
her
it.
space. Yeah. High tea at noon, man. Yeah. This dining room sits between the family room, which is that very exuberant, joyful color bomb, and then the foyer, which is in the front room, which is wrapped in this really incredible silk embroidered wall covering. It's lots of greens and blues and peacock level, color palette. So the dining room becomes what I call a palette cleanser. So when you're designing a space, you have to think about how do these rooms relate to each other. Remember the whole mood board thing. We lay all the mood boards out, the mood board for the front hall, the mood board for the dining room, the mood board for the family room. If you put a Gracie wall covering on all three rooms, and they all are chinoiserie or, some very, detailed organic pattern, the eye can get overwhelmed. It can become too busy. So the dining room became like the break, the visual, palette cleanser, if you will, between two very powerful rooms. So that's why we went with that soft kind of lavender lacquer, because we just needed to give the eye a break. Initially, I was not going to do the family room with that Gracie wall covering. I had a different plan, and she wanted to go a bit bolder. So it really drove the need for the dining room to be a bit more simple and understated, even though it's also maximalist with that incredible Art Deco chandelier, the palmetto piece that took like 8 hours to assemble. And as you mentioned, Caroline, the banquettes and all the other elements that are at work in the room.
To say that it had to be a palette cleanser is fair in comparison to the living room, but on its own, like, God, it's spectacular. I think it was my favorite room in the whole book, just because also
I love that
purple is not a color that many people go to, and it's so elegant, so feminine, and it just looks so good with that like sort of walnut table. Just everything. It's so pretty. And okay, I all of a sudden I was flipping back through it, and I was like, oh my gosh, she used a jute rug in here. What an unpredictable choice. But it really is perfect because it kind of brings the whole thing sort of down a little bit, like, down not in terms of like energy, but like down in terms of its, I guess,
like accessibility.
Fanciness. Yeah, like it's more casual.
Understated.
Yeah.
Understated, soft underfoot. And again, not everything has to be at a 10. We can dial it down to a 3, and it doesn't compromise the overall beauty of the space. So yeah, we try to create rooms that make people jealous. And I've had clients that will say to me, I think I'm losing some friends over this house because it's so much fancier than theirs. And that is not my problem. I've done my job. We want to create rooms that make people feel a certain way. And when I say jealousy, I mean it from the angle of the envy of living a life well lived. And whatever that might mean for you as far as the budget, whatever you can achieve, make it custom to you. That dining room is customized for my client, Erica. That's who she is. That might not be who you are, but whatever it is, just do it to the max. Even if it's modern and minimalist, do it to the max as far as finishing it and making it really tailored to your personality.
You know what? Make your friends and neighbors jealous. They can have it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Hire me. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I think it's just about, I think about how she wanted to make that house a statement, not only for herself, but more importantly for her little girls, to show them what to expect from their men in the future and how to live their lives elegantly. I think it's great.
Can you tell us more about that? Was it a challenge to design a home that you knew young kids were going to be in? I mean, they're not that young. I saw a picture. They're like middle school and high school. It's not like they're 3.
Mm-hmm.
Was that challenging?
No, we spent a lot of time with the parents, with their children in the room, and we interview the children. We kind of draw them out, and the parents will tell you if the children are rambunctious, if they're very careful. These are young ladies. They have traveled the world. They know multiple languages. They're very gifted, upwardly mobile young ladies. So I already knew that they were going to be respectful of furniture and fabrics and drapery treatments. They were not going to come through and trash it. But we have some, projects where the children are the exact opposite. They are going to live as children. They have dogs and cats, and they're going to, live a certain way. So that's where we start bringing in fabrics that are indoor-outdoor rated. That can take a beating, that can take stains. The jute rug in the dining room was not just there for visual, but it's also a bit more forgiving for the wear and tear that a dining room might receive. Scotch guarding furniture, right? These are all things that we take into account. Even smooth lines on furniture itself, like not having sharp edges. These are things that can rip stockings or skin, if you're walking by a sharp edge table. So we think about all of that when we're thinking through the traffic flow of a room to make sure it's really functional for everyday life.
Yeah. I have said this before on the podcast and we'll stick to it, but outdoor fabrics are great, but there's no better kid proofing than color and pattern.
Yes.
I mean, far more indestructible than a beige outdoor performance fabric.
Yes. Just remember, color and pattern covers a multitude of sins.
Yeah. Camouflage. Let's talk about the YouTube series, because the YouTube series that you recently launched on YouTube kind of outlines, episode 1 outlines sort of the beginning of the design process with this same client. What was the kind of impetus behind the YouTube series? You have a masterclass, sort of, what is it? I guess you would say a course.
Yeah, course.
So what made you want to go and kind of launch it for everybody and not just masterclass?
Well, I think that we are always looking for ways to shake things up at Corey Damen Jenkins and Associates. We're trying to do things differently. And there's never been a coffee table book that had a streaming series dedicated to the front cover. And conversely, there's never been a streaming series that has been filmed as a complement to a coffee table book. So we're making some history here and changing the way how I think people look at coffee table books in general. It's like you can watch this series and really get a behind the scenes, look into what made this project possible. It's not HGTV where you're designing the home within 1 week for, $500. No shade against HGTV, but I don't believe that they really portray an accurate view of what really happens with the design process. No, this series keeps it real. We're discussing real price points. We don't hide the fact that it took 18 months. The client wanted it done in 3 months. I told her that is not happening. And thankfully, she had the patience of a saint and the interest to see it through all the way. But it took 18 months of my life, right? It's produced by Goodbye Pictures, which is a multi-Emmy and Peabody Award-winning production crew. They are behind television hits like Project Runway, the Dream Home Makeover with Shay McGee, $1 Million Decorators. the entire series was filmed in 4K. So it's the first design show of its nature to hit the YouTube platform that is Netflix or Hulu, Disney Plus level definition as far as television quality. So it's like watching a movie on the YouTube channel about a design show that keeps it real and authentic. And it's humorous, it's emotional, it's fun, it's educational. It's got a tinge of reality TV with it, but it keeps it relatable. It's a multi-million-dollar home, but I feel that we package it in a way that makes everyone feel that they can achieve it with the tips and tricks of the trade that I share at the end of each episode. That has simply not been done before. And so we're excited for people to kind of come into this world where we're taking these projects and making them feel down to earth and not, I don't know, disenfranchising or, like I said earlier in our conversation, gatekeeping others from having a world's view into what is possible with decoration and design.
It is really such a wonderful compliment to the book. And I loved digging into the book and then getting a peek at the first episode of the YouTube series and really dissecting the room in a different way, in a way that was a bit more accessible. And I love that you say that, you know what, not everybody has this budget, but there are so many things that you can take away and so much that you're giving to your audience.
Yeah, it was fun. I'm so grateful that Erica, my client, was willing to be on the show and be a guest star with us. Not everyone's willing to do that, but she was on board with letting us, bring the cameras into her home. The finale shows her coming off the elevator and seeing the home fully furnished for the very first time. When she had left about 4 weeks earlier, the house was just being, painted. She hadn't seen a shred of any decor. So we had the cameras rolling. It was an emotional reunion for her to see the home. It's very different than the television shows you see out there, because I think that the viewers will get a chance to follow the adventure from start to finish and get a real understanding of what price points really are and timelines really are to create a home. And to walk away from it hopefully feeling inspired, or as I conclude every episode of Design Reimagined, be bold. Whatever it might be, just be bold and have fun with it.
Yeah, it was interesting to be able to see, because obviously you're sort of walking us through the design process, but we get to see before pictures, we get to see sort of the room where paint and wallpaper is done, but like the furniture isn't in, and then you see the furniture being at. So you kind of get to see the midway, which you don't often get to see that in a design project. I think it's really helpful just to be able to get and there's something about video that gives you such a better understanding of the space in a way that like a flat photograph, while gorgeous, just you can't tell the dimensionality as well.
Yeah, I'm so glad
Yeah.
you said that, because I think that is very exciting for the reader.
Mhm.
They find out that there's actually a streaming series dedicated to this first chapter. They'll go to the YouTube channel, and in the streaming series named Design Reimagined, which is the same title as the book. So they kind of, go hand in hand,
Mhm.
and they'll get a chance to see for themselves what went into those decisions. And then they can use those tips and tricks for themselves in their own home with their own budgets. And I love the design democracy of all of it, that we're making it in such a way to where people can make these interiors possible, whether it's with a designer like myself or with someone else or on their own. They can achieve some of these tenets with me helping them as an instructor.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to people, watching it and hopefully feeling inspired.
Yeah. Well, we agree, because we also feel like people need to customize their space, and we really try to make that happen as much as possible. So
Yeah.
we're on the same page.
I love it. I love it.
Well, I did want to talk about, you kind of talk in the book about anchor pieces, and we've, talked about anchor pieces a lot on the show. One thing that I've sort of been thinking about recently is, maybe you find a great fabric, right? And I think maybe this doesn't necessarily apply if your anchor piece is a wallpaper or a rug. But what if you find a great fabric, you love it, you want to design your room around it? There's so many ways you could use an anchor fabric. So how do you know what to put it on? Like, what's the vehicle for that fabric? Is there ever because you could use it anywhere, really.
Right. Great question. I would say it would depend upon what is the scale of the pattern on the anchor fabric. If there is a pattern, for example, what's the price point of the anchor fabric? Because that will determine whether or not you're going to upholster a sofa that may require 18 yards of that fabric, or just some accent pillows on the sofa, right? Which may only require 3 or 4 yards of fabric. So that's going to be, I think, a big part of it. But if you really love it, and it's truly the most special thing you've ever seen, my recommendation would be to use it in a profound way that makes a big statement. So it could be on the sofa. It could be drapery treatments or window treatments on the windows. It could be an accent chair, right? But I do think it's something that should be showcase in a space that you will appreciate and enjoy every single day that you walk by it. And be okay with splurging on that and really making it the wow factor that it deserves to be. Even if that means cutting back on another part of your budget to make other things happen, it's okay to splurge. Think of it like a toy box. A toy box has a lid on it. You put all your big toys in first, and then all your smaller toys have a way of kind of trickling down and finding a little nook and cranny to nestle into, and the lid closes. Well, the toy box is your budget. If you find this really amazing toy that's like the big toy in the box, like this anchor fabric, put that in first, and then you'll see how much room you have left in your toy box, ergo your budget, to put all the other little fabrics and elements in. And it's amazing. It always has a way of closing. The lid always closes. But prioritize the special thing first.
You, of course, in the first episode, have this gorgeous Gracie wallpaper that's sort of your anchor piece, and everything sort of flows from there. And your sort of emerald banquette and the sapphire blue sofa and the wallpaper on the ceiling and everything. So, yeah.
She did a about face on me on that project. She called me. It was around midnight. We were texting, and she was like, I had some concerns. I want this room to be even bolder. And we were texting back and forth, and I was actually at the studio still working. I said, you want to just call me on the phone and just like hash this out? She said, is it too late? I'm like, well, it's already midnight. You might as well. We have that relationship. And so we had already purchased that green silk wall covering for the walls. And then she said, I want to pivot to something a bit bolder for the walls. So we ended up putting the grass cloth on the ceiling and then tying it into the Gracie design. So again, the lid always closes on the toy box. It's just a matter of, how many things you can cram in there, but it always closes.
Yeah. The green grass cloth on the ceiling is absolutely gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really
Thank you. It's fun. Also, it was a cost-effective way to make that work because we could not send it back.
Had to use it somewhere.
The restocking fees, I'm telling you, they will kill you. So I said, this is not going back, just so you know, I can't send it back. So it's going on the ceiling. But it worked out.
Yeah, it did. Well, Corey, thank you so much. This was delightful. And everyone needs to go look up your YouTube channel. It's Designed Reimagined with Corey Damen Jenkins. Obviously, pre-order the book on Amazon. Where else can they find and follow you?
Instagram at Corey Damen Jenkins. I'm now on TikTok now. After Erica's house went viral, the TikTokers got a hold of it, and it started becoming like a viral thing. So I started getting some pressure from my team to join because they did not want someone else to like hijack my username on TikTok. So I'm on TikTok now. I have not made a single post yet, but that's coming with the Design Reimagined streaming series. Subscribe on the YouTube channel to get all the new episodes, the new book, and then also we just announced a new lighting collection with iColts.
Exciting.
So we're excited about that. That will be debuting worldwide in January of 26.
Okay.
So we're excited about that.
Lots of big things in the works. Love to hear it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And again, we just love Ballard. We love the accessibility of the site. I love the product. You'll see it throughout Design Reimagined.
I was going to say, I'm my little eagle eyes.
Yes, it is everywhere in that book. It's everywhere in the front cover and on Design Reimagined, the series, because the product is beautiful and it's got a great quality level to it, and it's accessible. And it's so easy to mix it in with all the beautiful things that we do for our clients. So thank you all for being such a consistent and dependable resource for designers. I think that's very important because we don't always get that, but we can always depend on Ballard to come through. So
we're your biggest fan. We have been for many years. So
thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
Thanks for having me.
And that's our show. You can find all of the show notes on our blog, howtodecorate.com/podcast.
To send in a decorating dilemma, email your questions to podcast@ballarddesigns.net so we can help you with your space.
And of course, be sure to follow us on social media at Ballard Designs.
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And please leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Until next time, happy
Happy
decorating.